Hey folks, this is Jeff Spring. I'm the Disc Golf Pro Tour CEO and Director. I'm coming to y'all today with a Thursday check-in. Just wanted to start these to make myself available and provide some transparency into the process of decision making and being available with updates for all of our fans, all the disc golfers out there, and all the viewers at home throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And the effects of the pandemic and the pandemic itself are still continuing now into late May. And we're definitely seeing some disc golf news break this week in terms of how the pandemic is affecting the season. So I think we'll just dive right in, and I'll spend about 5 to 10 minutes giving you guys an update and my perspective on what the news means. I'll take some questions, and then I'll try to provide a preview of what's coming down the Disc Golf Pro Tour pipeline. So with that, I'm going to jump right in and talk about the breaking news from the Professional Disc Golf Association. The first thing I'd like to say is that I'm in contact with the PDGA, and they're great partners. Love working with those guys. They run a great organization, and we're proud to be an Elite Series 1 of 2. Now, the second Elite Series is the National Tour. And coming into yesterday, 4 of the events had been postponed or canceled due to the pandemic. They had some events on the early side of their season. In fact, the 4th event of the season was the Beaver State Fling, which was scheduled to take place June 26th through 28th. The final 2 events were both in September, the Delaware event and the Music City Open. And both of those events have been taken off of the NT because the news broke that the NT is going to postpone to 2021. So there will be no national tour this year. It's unfortunate and disappointing, but we at the Disc Golf Pro Tour understand and respect that decision. I will clarify for anybody thinking that these events are fully canceled that in the PDGA's release, they actually mentioned that both Delaware and Music City are planning on continuing their events in a different capacity, downgraded capacity. So if you're local and you're looking forward to playing those events, I believe you should stay updated and be aware that they may continue in some capacity. But in terms of the national tour and that point series, as well as the bonuses, I think, that go along with it for pros that are playing in it and the media associated with them is no longer going to take place. When we get to the question portion, I'm happy to answer questions, but hopefully that gives you guys a little update. The one perspective I'd like to put on it is highlighting something that they wrote in their release, which is that both the Delaware Disc Golf Club and Music City Disc Golf Club expressed concerns about their ability to run the events to their full potential to the PDGA. And since the PDGA has reduced staffing, including event and media support at this time, they decided the best option was to postpone. Now, this wasn't necessarily a decision that was directly an effect of the medical risks of COVID-19. We know that those events are in September, and I've seen a lot of questions asking, why are you the PDGA? Why is the PDGA getting so far out in front and canceling these when we don't know what the actual medical guidance will be at that time? I can tell you guys from experience, and anybody listening, that the events take an enormous amount of coordination, enormous amount of support and energy and time and money to make them happen. So it's very understandable and reasonable that the event teams, seeing how the pandemic was affecting all the different parts of an event that big, made a decision that running at a smaller capacity was appropriate. And really, with 4 of the events on the national tour already having to be postponed or canceled, it doesn't make much sense to try to hold on to something that's just 2 events. But that said, the PDGA, I want everyone to know, has been enormously supportive of working with us as we move forward in an attempt to restart our season. They're very supportive of that, and we are a part of the PDGA. We are a series of PDGA A tiers and on the Elite Series. So the PDGA is in that support saying, hey, there's professional disc golf that may be able to be held this year, and we're looking forward to getting to a point where we're ready to announce a restart. I'll get to that a little bit later. The other news that broke was regarding the World Championship. We've been in touch with the PDGA about this as well, all the way from the early days of the pandemic when there was discussions about how can we be flexible? Are there other venues potentially if Utah wasn't an option? Turns out Utah is an option, and that's great. You know, sanctioning is already open in Utah, so we are seeing questions about why is the event not being held now, or you know, there's a June 1 decision date on whether or not it will move forward, and that decision is restored in a full capacity. I can tell you again, from having the experience of running a world championship, if there's not certainty that the event can be run within 3 months of the event, there is very little hope for it to be run very well and to the standard that you would want a world championship to be run. That's why that June 1st date is there, as far as I understand. And again, without speaking for the PDGA, like I would just say I support, you know, that decision date, and I think that anyone who's run a major understands that if you're going past June 1st with uncertainty, it's wiser just to look to the future, which I think is the plan. However, June 1st is not here yet, and international travel, you know, has to be assessed. I understand that it's not a world championship without world participants, and I think that that's reasonable as well. So that's my brief take on that. We are happy to be flexible with our schedule, and really, you know, we've said from day one, that's the most important event in the world, and we'll do whatever, you know, is needed on our side to help make that possible. So we're flexible, and if need be, you know, we hope to be there if it happens. We hope to cover it with the Disc Golf Network, and we would look forward to, you know, helping out in any way possible. So that's the next piece of the update. Next, I want to talk about the Disc Golf Pro Tour a little bit. I mentioned that the PDGA is supporting our efforts to continue looking into the restart of our season. And tomorrow, we'll be laying out a timeline of announcements that we feel we can hit. So we're looking at our West Coast swing very, very closely right now. I've been on here in the past saying that I do think Portland Open is viable, and that we hope to restart the season then. We are looking closely at what we can do with the San Francisco Open and the challenge at Goat Hill. And at this point in time, I can tell you that we see all three of those as a unit. And we see that because as we look at taking our vehicles, asking pros to be there, we really don't think it would be worth going to one or two events necessarily on the West Coast. So we are looking and working with the TD Sean Jack and Alan Risley of the other two events, and looking at Portland Open and what's going on there. And I think that in the very near future, we will give a final decision on moving forward or stepping back from that West Coast swing. That said, we do have some other events that we're working on, not only from the next event up, which is the Silver Cup in Wisconsin, but if we were unable to go to the West Coast, we're looking at some backup plans, including a few events I've spoke of before. So with that said, the timeline will be released tomorrow. So we'll make a posting on our website, share it through social media, and it will give you guys more information on when we'll release our restart dates, you know, what the West Coast swing is looking like and what the other options for us are. And I would expect, you know, a full restart laid out by the end of the following week. So that's a little bit of news from us. Look for our announcement tomorrow. We've been working hard on it, and we're working really hard on hemming up our entire plans for mitigations and safety in regards to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm going to check to see if there are any questions. I can't actually see the chat board, but perhaps there are. I'm going to throw it over to Mo. And if nobody's asked me any questions, maybe you can ask me one. Are you there?
Yeah. So this is Pro Tour Media Manager Mahmoud Bahrani. checking in. We got a question from Chaser90EK. Will the DGPT consider adding more Silver Series events to the schedule to make up for lost events?
The short answer is yes. We are considering adding events to any zone that has a clear opening and that our events are stepping out of. I know that the CCR Open has announced their intent to cancel that Silver Series event, for instance. So would there be a possibility of rescheduling a different event on that weekend? Perhaps. But in general, we are open to rescheduling. There are a number of considerations when you're putting a new event in the schedule, but I think that all in all, with our desire to get the tour like coordinated and up and running in a timely and safe manner, that rescheduling is on the table.
Okay, so here's another question from the chat board. Neil Swanson it's not really a question, but he's saying, I'm just hoping that Maple and Green Mountain are a go. So what can you tell us about Maple and Green Mountain?
So we delayed the opening of those registrations for about 2 months, but last Friday they opened. And when we opened those events, we made a statement that said, we are confident that these events will run, hence we're opening registration. So our registration this year consists of 4 tiers, 1,000 plus rated and 900 plus rated MPO and FPO players respectively is tier 1. Tier 2 is 970 rated MPO, and 870 rated FPO. Tier 3 is for 935 rated MPO and 835 rated FPO. And Tier 4 is 900 rated MPO. So no one under 900 is playing the pro side of DGPT events this year. That was announced in the off season, but then open registration for FPO. So those go week by week by week. Tomorrow, on Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Tier 2 opens for Idlewild, Green Mountain, and Maple Hill. And our announcement also said that we will be following in those events all the current COVID-19 pandemic guidelines laid forth in collaboration with the PDGA. So those guidelines are laid out by the PDGA, and we're going to announce our own when we restart that build on those. And it also, our announcement last week about GMC, MVP, and Idlewild also said that we plan on no spectators at those events. We're taking any potential restart incredibly seriously, and I just do not see a way for us to allow spectators at any of these events. That said, time will tell if there are possibilities, but right now, no spectators, and that's as much for the players and the people that are going to tour as anybody else. We want a controlled environment at all these events, and unless something changes significantly, please don't expect spectators, and please spread the word.
Okay, Jeff, so we got another question here from Brent Faubert. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Moving forward, what would a tournament need to have in order to be considered being added to the tour as a substitute event?
We're not putting an open call out for events. Really, I wouldn't say that there's much an event can do to become added to the tour in 2020. We're not actively seeking and open to events. We have a number of TDs, local teams, and folks that we work with that are providing a number of opportunities for us to reschedule or create or add an event onto the tour. In addition to the Silver Series events we have, there's a number of events that could join the Silver Series in future years. The event process in general is normally announced, and this is going to be normal going forward, on September 1st of each year. We'll update our guidelines for what we're seeking for. And there are forms online to reach out and say, hey, I'm interested in hosting an event in future years. So go to dgpt.com and just search for, a venue application.
Okay, Luis Gardia wants to know, what are the plans for a Midwest swing?
Yeah, Midwest swing. So right now we are looking at our Midwest swing as Silver Cup on July 10th through 12th. The CCR Open has been announced their intent to cancel. So we would just probably head over to DGLO. We're working with Discraft right now to understand the possibilities regarding DGLO. We know that Michigan has been in a tighter lockdown than most states. So we are, being very prudent before announcing what we expect there. But then we head down to Idlewild, which that event from the tournament director's perspective looks like it can move forward. And we intend to move forward with Idlewild, as well as Ledgestone, which is right after that. After Ledgestone is the Charlie Vettner Open in the middle of August before we head up towards MVP and GMC. So our Midwest swing is pretty set. I will tell you that if there was, if we found it on, we didn't have the ability to run the West Coast swing, which is in the final phases of decision making, we would most likely look to try to reschedule things if we were able to reschedule anything in June in the Midwest region where we would be picking up anyway.
All right, cool. And here's a really good one actually from Chaser 90EK. Will there still be live broadcast of events? And if so, any changes to like the media offerings basically?
So our plans are the same regarding media at this time. There are some real considerations because we're trying to limit, potential sizes of any number of people on a whole at once. We're kicking around group sizes of players, potentially going to limit the size of a media team. And as some people know, when we do go live, we normally do have another crew filming post-production. So there are some considerations depending on local guidelines and what everyone's comfortable with that we're working through right now. At this time, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to, have very small alterations, if any, to the media plans, but at Lead Series events, we still plan to go live. And I believe from talking to the media teams, if there are any changes that happen, it would only be out of necessity from a media team side to maybe make a different call on attending, and I feel confident we would be able to just deliver the post production that is planned at this time.
Okay, cool. And I guess last question for you. It looks like this is the last question on the board. What about the Mid-America Open? The Mid-America Open, very popular event, and I believe I'm actually not 100% sure where it is, but it's on a very popular course down there.
Right. Yeah, the Mid-American Open. So I'm sorry to leave that out. That's on a weekend in between DGLO and Idlewild, I believe. Yeah, the Mid-America Open. I actually haven't spoken to the team there, and they're kind of next on my list of people to talk to. But last time I did talk to them, they were disappointed because it's the same team that was scheduled to run the Tim Selinsky championship, the U.S. Masters championship, and that had been canceled for the year. So I believe they'll run that next year. But when we had that discussion, they said, well, we plan to move forward with our A tier at this time. So that was a while ago. Looking forward to catching up with the guys there. And as far as I know, that is still planned to move forward. Thanks, Mo. So that said, I appreciate the questions. I'll emphasize 2 points on my way out. Number one, we will have a timeline that we're putting forward tomorrow in our announcements that can confirm as much as possible at that time, but also will set a roadmap for us to, make some decisions, communicate with everyone. We know that fans of the game and pros that depend on the game, media teams that depend on the game, and our partners in the industry are curious as to how we'll approach things. And with the NT not on the schedule anymore, we certainly take that responsibility seriously. That's the first point. Second point is we are in the process of trying to vet every safety measure, taking the guidance and best practices from the PDGA, building on that and applying it to our venues, to our media teams, and to any necessary player travel. So that process has been going on for a while, but we're nearing the end of it, and we're nearing a point where we can share that with you all. So look forward to, setting a timeline tomorrow with our announcement and then sharing as much as we can. I appreciate people joining for this update, and it is in all the spirit of transparency. Thanks to Mahmoud Barani for running the show here and giving me the questions. And with that, we'll see you tonight for the start of week 2 of the Virtual Putting Invitational presented by Infinite Discs. We've got 4 matches. See you at 7 p.m. right here on the YouTube channel.